In this episode of the Hubcast, we're going to dive into some digital advertising best practices with a true expert, John Lojek, Strategic Partnership Manager from Google. John has over 20 years of experience working in technology, strategy, and innovation roles in the US, Europe, and Asia. He currently helps run one of Google's product partnership programs that works with companies to develop easy-to-use digital advertising tools. And John is a long-term champion of helping startups and small businesses succeed. At My PT Hub, we're currently working on some exciting new marketing features to help our trainers accelerate their businesses more effectively online. So this one I'm actually really excited about. And firstly, John, thank you very much for jumping on this with me. It's much appreciated.
Great to be here.
I mean, I think let's start with Google as itself. I mean, it gets a lot of searches. I think it's fair to say that people search a lot on Google. And are there any trends or themes that you've seen in recent years within the fitness industry in particular, with personal training or coaching? Like, has anything changed that you've seen?
Yeah, so a couple of things that stick out. And also just to put some context around it, Google gets north of 3.5 billion searches a day, which is mind-boggling. We just think about that around the globe. So there's a lot of information that people are looking for, seeking, that flows through the system continuously. So yeah, as you said, trends, we're always looking at what are sort of the interesting patterns that come out of that. And for fitness in particular, it's been very strong for many years now. So you go back a decade and you can see people are looking for, interested in, and generally the trends around fitness on the rise. UK, US, Australia, a lot of the areas where I know My PT Hub has a lot of folks. One of the things that you see in particular is folks searching to get into the industry. I was just looking at some of the stats this week, and for example, searches like skills needed to be a personal trainer in the UK or qualifications needed up, 50 to 100%. Even this last year, where we've seen some dip in that activity, just because folks are going through a lot of change, and so even with some of those dips, you still see year on year a lot of interesting demand there. I'm not a fitness industry expert, but I got really curious starting to look through some of these stats, because having worked in and around technology for most of my career, one thing that you can certainly say in tech is that the one constant is change. Doesn't matter what part of technology you work in, there's always something changing. And that can be a little bit frustrating sometimes. You've got to upgrade a device or think about how you refresh skills. But I've always thought that the excitement outweighs that, because it gives you lots of opportunity and new areas open. So I was really surprised looking at all these fitness trends that there's so many parallels. And if you look at the last 5, 6, 7 years, where I kind of went back looking at fitness, what you see is that within fitness, it's way more dynamic than I would have thought. I'm sure all trainers on this call are saying, yeah, we get it. Right? We do this every day. But the way that people train, the types of approaches, methodology, the mix of training, you can all see how the patterns have changed quite a bit in searches. So to give you a specific example from the US, searches for Zumba certification or Zumba instructor significantly down over the last 3 years. And I know that Zumba was really hot for a long time. And equally, you can see certain things that, on the rise and people are looking for. So, and maybe the last thing I'll call out is just mobile. That maybe not a surprise, but over the last several years, you've seen in fitness in the same way we've seen a lot of categories that a significant shift to mobile. So more searches start on end with mobile. And that's both for trainers looking for information about improving their business, people looking to get in training, but also clients searching for. So probably maybe a headline there if you're a trainer. Always good to look at if you have a digital asset or any sort of presence online. Always look what it looks like on a mobile. So you have a sense of what people will see when they consume it.
It's crazy because, I mean, we can get some data, but that's crazy. The amount of searches that go into Google every day. That is, I didn't know that stat, but that is a stat I'm going to keep. Wow. Yeah. So from our side of things, I think, as I said, like we can sort of grab data, and over the last 12 months, really, we can sort of see how things are changing, like from online and what sort of clients trainers are looking for. And what you said about people like getting their qualification and remote coaching and stuff is sort of like what we're seeing, and it's about education is a large like part of like the sort of correlation that you've just mentioned as well there. But what effect, if any, has COVID had on searches for the industry?
Yeah. So that's also been really interesting because the last 12 months has marked some big swings up and down. One of the things that, like as I mentioned just now, is that training overall and generally the fitness category of product services has been really strong. And what I found interesting, maybe tied to New Year's resolutions, that if you go back years, you see really strong search patterns, but there's 1 month every year where it spikes and it goes up. Yeah, any guesses what that month? January. Without fail, every month. But so then something interesting happened this last 12-month period. In the US, we saw those same spikes happen in June and September. In the UK, we saw 3 spikes, April, May, and November. So really strong correlations to clearly lockdown activity or news and sort of waves of COVID probably affecting in different populations. So that was pretty fascinating because it has broken some of those patterns. On a related note, no surprise here probably that online personal trainer as a search phrase or sort of permutations of that, really strong, really for many years. But in the UK, again, lots of spikes, almost exactly correlated to our lockdown period. And equally, that phrase, personal trainer near me. So if you're looking for anything sort of on your phone, mobile, gyms near me, personal trainers near me, that used to be one of the strongest phrases going up. We saw the biggest dip in that in 5 years, in March and April last year in 2020 in the US. And similarly in the UK, 3 different dips, all correlating to lockdown. But good news on that front, I was just running searches literally this morning around what are the hot sort of searches as people are looking out ahead. And things like when will gyms reopen? All versions of gyms reopening, gyms near me, when will they open in the UK? Over 1,000% in the periods, both last year as we were coming out of lockdown in the summer, and we're starting to see that activity again. So clearly there's a lot of pent up demand for folks to get back out there and start working with folks, even if they've worked with them online, to get that personal and in-person experience as well.
It's really interesting you say the near me, like on Google, because it's something obviously I use regularly, especially if I'm looking for, I don't know, even if it's just like an MOT for my car or whatever that might be. It's interesting, and I never really thought of it from that side of things. And from a personal trainer's perspective, and looking at it from a client, the fact that they're saying near me suggests they're obviously wanting to do maybe like in-person training. And the fact that that's reduced, maybe they're not too bothered about them being close to them, and maybe personal training can, obviously they know that it's online, that they can be trained from anywhere in the world. So that sort of makes sense.
And I think that's one of those probably lasting effects of COVID. What we've seen in general in sort of the technology world, if I think about e-commerce, we've seen trends that we thought would take another 5, even to 10 years before they would happen. Especially if people who are a little bit timid about moving my store online or starting to sell or do anything that's online. It might be a little bit scary or overwhelming. If there was ever a moment that a business was going to take a leap, it's been this last year. And I think what you see in these numbers and stats around fitness, same thing. So if there are trainers who are a little bit reluctant about maybe creating an online and digital product, boy, now's the time to do it. And if ever there was a client searching for that who maybe is a little bit weary about going into that gym or just wants to open up that option. And I mean, on a personal anecdotal front, I'm talking just to friends and colleagues, a lot of them have discovered, there's a lot of benefits for that as well. Because if you're a busy professional, you're trying to work around a schedule, and before your only option really is to work with that trainer during this specific hour, this slot, this one day. Well, now you can do hybrid, or maybe join something completely online where you're still getting a sense of interaction and class-based things. And there's just so many options now. And that's really highlighted it for folks the last year.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think that with people, going forward, people aren't going to go straight back to one-to-one training, and I think people see the benefits of online training. Sometimes it can be cheaper. Sometimes you can get more out of your money, I suppose. And obviously, one-to-one PTing can be fairly expensive, obviously depending where you are. And I think there's obviously an overarching factor here that it's either cost effective, it's more time efficient, and obviously also you don't have to be in a particular area. They can give home workouts, all that sort of stuff. So like you said, I think there's going to be, this is going to go on for the foreseeable future, if not indefinitely, that the hybrid sort of coach or online coach is sort of the way that it's going to stay and go as well. Something I really wanted to ask you is, I mean, people are really familiar with searching online. I think if I could almost ask anyone in the world to search something on Google, and something will pop up that they're looking for. But many won't know digital advertising very well.
Yeah.
What are the like basics of digital ads? Like, are you able to break it down and like different options, where to start, and like budget?
Yeah. And we get asked that question, as you can imagine, quite a bit of just, how do I wrap my head around all this? Because it is fairly complex today. In fact, Google Ads itself turned 20 years old last fall. So if you think about that, it's an industry that's still relatively new, but in that time has grown, has expanded, and is, I will admit, the first person to admit, exceptionally complicated today. And so it can be a little bit overwhelming about starting points. And if people think, well, digital advertising, yeah, obviously it's just online ads, but there are a couple of things I always point out to think about that. That's different than if you're printing a flyer, or a billboard, or a radio ad. One of those is targeting. So because the internet is so connected and interconnected, devices, web pages, etc., you can be a lot clearer about making sure your money is working for you by that ad reaching the person it's intended to. You can target individuals who have lifestyles, who have interests, and make that correlation and target them. And that's really powerful. There's an old marketing phrase that goes, I know I'm wasting half my marketing budget. I just don't know which half. And online advertising is, and marketing in general, it tries to basically solve for that by saying, can we get smarter about making sure that if you're spending money on this, it's actually being shown to the right folks. And then that leads you to another thing that is different about online advertising, which is measurement. So you can be clear about who it's reaching, and then you can also be a lot clearer about what your return on investment is for running that ad. You know, if I put a billboard out there, or I've got a magazine ad, I know a lot of eyeballs are looking at it, but it's really hard for me to measure, did the people actually walk in my door from a shop, or from a fitness trainer, did actually someone pick up the phone? Unless I put in that ad, let me know you've seen this ad, or here's a coupon, which we sometimes see, right? We're looking at this print ads. It's really, really hard to tell if that's being effective or not. So online advertising gives you an incredible amount of insight into who's seeing it, and what you're getting for it. So you didn't think about, okay, what are these ads online? Now, everyone probably on this podcast would have seen all these versions, but just to kind of break them down, if you run a search, you might see search ads. So those are the ads that are text-based. They tend to pop up at the top or the side. What's nice about those is they're very intent-driven. If someone says, I'm looking for a personal trainer near me, then the search engine can be pretty clear, hey, this individual is literally looking for a trainer that might be nearby. So let's show ads for folks not in, say Thailand. If they're based in London, it'll try to find folks and actually use their geography. For a mobile device, you can then pick up a lot of information about where that individual is searching and intuit that. Another type of ad format, display. So display ads are basically little billboards. So those are the boxes or banners that you see pop up. You know, if you're on a blog, if you're on a web page that's a newspaper, something like that. They have images. They might be animated. It might be GIFs. Related, similar, you might see social media ads. So you're scrolling through your feed and you see promoted ones pop up. So they look just like any other feed, but they've got an ad at the top and a picture and an image. And then video ads. So if you watch almost anything online, you might see a little teaser at the beginning or interrupted. Those are kind of the big categories. There are lots of others, shopping ads, if you're in a marketplace and things like that. But those are the main categories. And you kind of think, well, where to start? So this is where it gets complicated. And my number one piece of advice to any small business is, if you can work with a platform that understands your business, first of all, so understands the industry that you're coming from, and has used automation to build some sort of tool for you, it removes probably 95% of the thinking you need to do. Because a lot of those complications in the ad products that exist today are there for very, very big brands, right? If you're a Nike, if you're a Man United, you have armies of folks who are creating reams and reams of marketing material and plans that just isn't appropriate. It's not ever needed for someone who's running a small business, or even if you're a fitness professional working with hundreds of clients, you don't need all those tools. It's overkill. So if you can find a platform that says, hey, look, we do a lot of heavy lifting for you. You give us a signal, so who you're trying to reach, what your budget looks like, what your goals are, and the platform does the rest. That's key. And the reason I say automation is because that's how you keep your costs down. It used to be years ago, before we had this technology, that if you wanted to run a digital ad, you basically had to be an expert yourself. So you do a lot of reading online, watching tutorials, or you paid someone to do it, which is expensive. You're not only paying for the digital ad, but now you're paying for someone to set it all up and run it for you. And that person's going to want a fee and charging a salary as well. So today, if you can find a platform like that, then click, boom, you set it up and get going. And then you mentioned budget. So that's always one that folks are puzzled with. Where do I start? What's too much? What's too little? And it's a good thing to call out advertising is a paid product. So you can do searches. Your presence can show up through social media, through online searches. But what advertising does is sort of guarantee that you can target your ad and it's in front of those eyeballs. It's difficult to know with organic content who sees it, if it'll be shown or not. And there's lots of factors involved there. What we usually give as a rule of thumb is something about £5 a day, $7 a day. That's really rough, but it's sort of, if you want to get into the game and start testing, experimenting with it, that's usually a good amount. And that allows folks then to be able to usually run one or two types of ad formats, make sure they're seen on multiple channels. And then there's obviously lots of different ways that you can configure that as it goes up. To put that in context as well, those amounts, you can reach hundreds or even thousands of people. And that's about 3 to 4 times cheaper than if you're going to do that through traditional advertising. So imagine that, right? You spend £5, $7 a day. You might reach hundreds or thousands of people. Now, if you wanted to reach those same 1,000 with a flyer, you've got to design that flyer, print that flyer, pay for postage, or have someone walk around and put that flyer in 1,000 people's doors. It's really hard to do that for a tenner, right? Which is one of the reasons why that industry has taken off and why digital advertising has flourished, but also gotten fairly complicated.
It's funny when you put it in that perspective, because that makes so much sense. Like if you were to put 1,000 leaflets through 1,000 people's doors, that'd be an obscene amount. And obviously online is exactly the way that it's going at the moment. So it makes complete sense. And the automation side and having a product that can do that sounds very similar to what it is that we're working on.
Yeah, exactly.
Funnily enough.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's one of the reasons obviously we talked and collaborated, because it's it's platforms like My PT Hub where we thought, well, look, if there's anyone who understands the fitness industry, it's My PT Hub. So it's been great being able to collaborate and work on some of the marketing tools to come.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, something a lot of people, we get asked a fair bit that we can't really give them an answer for, is how Google Ads work, and at what point does the system know what to show? So how's that all sort of work behind the scenes? Yeah,
so this gets also fairly complicated. So Google makes it look really easy, but this is where their engineers have been working on this product for a long, long time, and lots of other platforms to do that. So at a high level, any ad that you see online is an auction. It's a bid that someone's put on for that ad. And you think, well, wow, that's pretty tedious, right? For every ad, I need to specify how much money I'm going to spend for that ad. And then it enters an auction and gets served. Well, this is sort of the magic of the internet and of our modern technology and algorithms. So if you think about it, when you run a search and you land on a search page, Google has looked through trillions of websites to find what content it thinks is relevant for that search. And then it's just giving you the top 10. At the same time, in parallel, it's figured out for the content it's going to show, which ads are most relevant for someone who might be looking for that content. And then it's going to use lots of different signals. So a myth here, one that we hear often is, it must just be whoever bids the most money. If I got a huge budget, my ad will automatically get shown. False, not the case. In fact, more times than not, it's not necessarily budget. It's about how likely is someone to click on that ad and get some value from it. So what's the likelihood that ad really connects with what that person is searching for, and will find value and keep going on where that ad journey is. And so it uses lots of different signals. It runs this auction to say who has the strongest ad, and price is part of that. So that's why we say these minimum budgets. The question you just asked is to make sure at least you're in the game and you're being seen. And then it says, okay, there were 10 that we could look at. There's 4 that look like they're the closest, and then these 3 in this order, and that's what we're going to show. And then it puts that web page together and it gives it to you, and does that in a split second, fraction of a second, which I still find mind-boggling. I mean, working at Google,
that is crazy,
for years. But to think about, that's happening every time someone searches. The 3.5 billion times, everyone's searching a day.
Yeah, I know. I love that.
So maybe that's hopefully not too complicated, but that's sort of generally how it works. So I mean, the takeaway there is if you've got good ads, obviously, again, if you work with the platform or you're a pro, then you try to make a good ad, and then chiefly what you have behind that ad is what matters, right? Because you want to see a good product that's complete, that gives someone who clicks that ad a good indication of why they clicked the ad and what value they'll get from it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't expect you to have this stat at all, but it's something that's come to my mind. What percentage of people go to page 2 on Google after searching for something?
Well, that's a great question. I did know that at one point, but it's fairly low. It's fairly low.
Yeah, I thought it might be. I don't think I've ever gone to page. Well, I mean, I must have occasionally, but I never go to page 2. So having those ads and making it obviously as streamlined as possible is obviously quite important. You don't want to be on page 2 a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's about, I mean, same thing. Newspapers used to have this phrase called above the fold, which was, literally if you folded a newspaper on the front page, is your ad or is your article up there? Because that's what people, you see. And that's also what's usually in a physical newspaper holder, right? It's the top portion of the newspaper. So in the website world, above the fold is when you load a web page, what's what you see? And, if you think about that sort of search terms, it's like, if you search something, does it come up on that first page? And so it's really valuable if you can do that. Again, if you can do that organically, because you're a big brand and lots of people are following you, then you'll probably pop up on the first page. But if you're not, you're trying to grow your business, you're a smaller, say, fitness professional, then how do you get up there? Well, that's where paid advertising can kind of give you the edge to say, well, I want to make sure I'm at the top and someone's eyeballs that's looking for that sees me.
Yeah. I mean, going into that, I mean, you must have seen a very large amount of ads. And what would you say makes a good ad? Is it like making it a clear message, the landing page, or the package best practice? I mean, what have you seen that works well?
Yeah, so probably my top piece of advice here, especially in fitness, is think about the experience for that potential client when they click that ad and they come to whatever that page is. It's one of your packages. It's something about you, right? And if someone was hitting that page because they were referred to it, or there's someone who already knows you, right? They've worked with you before and they're just going there to say, purchase another product. That's okay, right? You just have a little bit of description. I just want to make sure I'm actually clicking and putting my credit card in the right place. Yeah. But if you click an ad, chances are that's a brand new person. They don't know your brand. They don't know what you're about. So the more you can put energy into making sure that landing page, right, that package page represents you, let your personality come through. Use imagery. If you've got video, bring it to life. If there are things like certifications, testimonials from customers and clients, again, it doesn't need to be War and Peace. It doesn't have to be 20 pages long. Again, think about the concept of what's on the, but what we're just talking about, right, above the fold, what do they get hit with, right? And if the client sees that, are they thinking, oh, wow, I really connect with this trainer. I want to learn more, right? I want to click to either call them, find out more, or there's a great package here in the price range I'm looking for. Let me give it a go. I'm gonna go forward with it. So that's probably the top thing you can think of is what sits behind the ad. And especially if you're working with a platform, the ad will reflect that quality, but it's worth putting a little bit of time in to make sure that what you're seeing online represents you well.
It's really interesting you say that, because I've spoken to a very large number of trainers over the years, and what I've always thought was what would like be good marketing for a trainer is exactly what you're saying there. And for you to say that and like what you've seen that works well over the years is really interesting. And that is just showing yourself, isn't it, really? And like you are, especially for personal trainers, you are the brand. So if I were to go on someone's pages, I don't want to read a load of stuff, really. I want to know who I'm investing in and who I want training me. So it's really interesting you say that. And I hope a lot of people take that on board going forward.
What is, I mean, if you think if I spend an hour doing anything online that represents you, it's kind of walking a mile in someone else's shoes. You think I'm trying to attract clients, maybe clients even outside of my immediate network or folks that I've worked with. I really want to grow and try to reach new people. What's that experience like for them? And if you were to come to that page, would you get enough of that? A cheap and easy way to test that is go to some folks who maybe don't know as much about your business. Maybe ask a friend of a friend, show them the page and say, what do you think? Not even what's the intent of this, just show them the page. What do you think? What do you think you would do next here? And if it's, if someone comes back and says, oh, it's a little bit confusing what my next step is. So I understand you're a trainer. I understand you offer these things, but okay, kind of what do I do with that? That's a problem, right? So what's your call to action? You hit this page and how do I learn more? How do I purchase a package? How do I find out more about you as a trainer? So it's just thinking, it's sort of backing up a little bit and thinking through what that experience is like.
Yeah, because when I write something, or I've created anything, because I know it, when I'm reading it back or looking at it, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's really important to show other people, because it's like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about here, because
Yeah.
only you know what you're talking about. So
Yeah.
do you encourage that quite a lot then, to show other people and get like other people's opinions on it, and not just your own?
Well, I mean, at Google, you imagine we're pretty data driven. So
Yeah.
the two things you can do in data is collect enough of it where you then get a sense of it's real, and then try to be agnostic, right? Sometimes also we are biased in the data we collect, and you show it to your other trainer best friend who has a very similar kind of style to you, and they'll say, yeah, this looks perfect. But if you can show it to lots of different types of folks, all who might be clients, you will tend to get a richer set of feedback. Yeah. And I say that because that's not to sound too geeky, but that's essentially how Google's algorithms work when it comes to figuring out. You asked the question before about figuring out what ads to show. And so today there's massive benefit by using tech and automation, because what it essentially does is say, hey, you tell me what this package is about. And you might say, okay, it's high intensity training, it's one-on-one, it is personalized, there's a nutrition element that I bring into it. You rattle them off, right? Maybe there's 6 or 7 characteristics. And instead of you needing to sit down and craft the one perfect ad you're going to show, which is how it was done years ago in digital advertising, what you can do is you feed that into the system. You say, hey, these are the attributes that describe me. And what the automation will do is put that together in thousands of different ways and show that to loads and loads of different people. And very quickly it then starts learning, these are the ways to combine those that seem to resonate with the client base you're going after. And even though we're clever as humans, the tech can do that in a much faster way, in an unbiased way. And so if you can replicate a little bit of that in the human world, it genuinely will help you with your business. Being able to just step back and objectively say, what does this communicate? And do people see the value that I'm trying to put out there? Can they understand kind of my approach and my brand as a trainer?
Yeah, I mean, anyone listening to this, I think, like, if it's something that they've been looking to do, I definitely think that they might start to see the value of doing this. But for anyone that is a bit nervous, maybe about spending money, this is one of the final things I wanted to ask you, really, John, is that, like, anyone that's a bit nervous about spending money or starting digital advertising in general, like setting budget limits and timeframes and pause ads and run tests, where do they start, and what's sort of your advice for them?
Yeah. So again, a couple things here come to mind. First and foremost, don't get overwhelmed by it. And one thing I know I do as a behavior is, if I learn about a new category or a new area, I'll go into Google and I'll start searching. I'll go into YouTube. I'll watch tutorials. So that can be really good for understanding, but it can also overwhelm you pretty quickly, because you start realizing, there's all this stuff out there. It's too complicated. I just can't do it. And you end up not taking that next step. And in fact, that might resonate even with some of these trainers listening around clients, right? Oh, I want to get started. I want to lose some weight. And then you start researching, it's all just a little bit hard. I'm not really sure where to start. So just like maybe a metaphor of the training world, small steps, take a step forward in doing it. And so that's, again, I keep coming back to, if you can work with a platform or a tool that takes away 99% of the thinking, it allows you to take that step really easily at a low risk and a budget that works for you. The second thing I would say is, be clear about your goals. There's typically 2 reasons that people will advertise in general, but certainly with digital advertising. An obvious one is, I want to grow my base. I want to grow my business. And if you've expanded as a trainer into things like digital products or hybrid or online, that allows you to go beyond your hour cap per week of working with clients, then you can really grow your business by reaching people that you might not have already touched, right? You might have an email list. You might have folks that follow you on social. How do you go beyond that bubble and find that next group? And that's where digital advertising works. The second reason, which people often overlook, is just for a healthy business, you got to keep feeding that funnel, right? The top of the funnel, people are moving through, you need leads and people that are interested. And the more that you can automate and have that being done for you, that means the more hours you have to be making money actually training, right? So a healthy business is one that's also just ticking over. Even if you're keeping the same number of clients, you want to have that pool coming in and growing. Time frame, you mentioned time frame. That's an important one. So one of the top mistakes that we see new folks make is try it a little bit, try it for a week or 10 days, and then stop it because they get nervous. Oh, I haven't seen a client yet. I can see my budget being spent. I'm getting nervous. and I know this sounds counterintuitive, but if there's anything you can do, is think out ahead a quarter or so, 2-3 months. And what's my goal with advertising?
Exactly.
Create a budget for it, and then let it run for that period of time. I'm going to use the training metaphor here again. I'm guessing, again, not a trainer, I'm guessing that lots of trainers will find it cliche that maybe someone starts working out with them, they haven't worked out in a while, and they're 5 days in, 7 days in, they're like, I started working with you to lose weight. I wanted to feel slimmer. And, I'm 7 days in, all I feel is sore and I hurt more. And I'm guessing what trainers
I think a lot of people will relate to that.
Yeah, well, trainers probably say, hey, you need to give it a minute, right? And what you'll see is you're laying the groundwork. And then I'm guessing, at least from my own experience, there's a certain moment where your body has learned, the muscle memory starts getting there, and then you see a step change. All of a sudden, the energy is behind you. I know it's weird, but advertising today with automation works exactly the same way. There's a learning period where, when I said before, it's training, right? It's trying to figure out all these permutations and what works well for you. And so you have to let it kind of run and work for you. And the biggest mistake you can make, and it's not a good use of money, is starting an ad 5-10 days later, getting nervous, stopping it, and then starting it again a month later. Because when you start it again, it starts over again, right? It's the same way. It's like, I missed workouts for 2 months and I'm going to go back and expect to be in the same physical shape. It doesn't work that way. So yeah, those are kind of the big things that come to mind.
Yeah, and like you said about the goals, I suppose it's really important to have realistic goals as well, isn't it? Like your first month, you might not want to start. Well, of course, you want to start making money straight away, but your goal might just be like reaching out to more people, not necessarily taking in more money from the very start, and that's really important.
Yeah. And, working with you guys, there's a couple of things that emerged. If I leave you with anything, sort of very specific, tangible tips, if you're going to start doing this, one that emerged that was clear is don't necessarily think about just advertising a package. So I think people often gravitate towards, this is my flagship product, so I'm going to put that one out there. And in the same way, you kind of need to learn how the channel is going to work for you. What we find is better is advertise several, or if you can put some budget behind most of the ones that you advertise. If you experiment a little bit, what you'll probably find is, wow, these 2 or 3 tend to do really well on digital advertising. Yeah. And then you might have others, especially at their high price points, where those are good referral programs or packages. Yeah. Once you've moved someone up and you have a relationship built with them, they're ready for that next one. And that brings me to point number 2, which has clearly emerged when we started kind of digging into the weeds on this. And that is that if you don't already today have something like a taster package, a get started package, or a challenge, a fitness challenge, like a 7 or 10 day lose weight, get fit, those are brilliant ones to do ads behind, because they allow someone, again, if we go back to some of our early conversation, someone who clicks that ad, they come to your page for the first time, they're seeing your package, they don't know anything about you. And they're still trying to figure out, in the same way you might be trying to figure out, should I spend some budget on ads? They're trying to figure out, should I spend some money on this trainer? And if they hit a package, it's 4, 5, 600 pounds or dollars, it might be, that's a lot to get started with. But they click that ad, they go, they see your page, they really click with you as a trainer, and you give them an option to say, hey, lower risk, here's a little bit of money to get started with the challenge, and kind of get your toe, right? Dip your toe in. That we've seen work really, really effectively. So I guess back to your original question, if you're giving folks advice on kind of how to overcome the momentum of, how do I do this, or should I get started? Those are a couple tips that you might want to start with.
Yeah. John, it's been so interesting. I mean, I there's 1,000 questions I want to ask you about Google and how it all works, and I don't think I could take it all in right now, if I'm being completely honest with you. But no, it's thank you so much for joining me, John. It's going to give people a real good insight into how they can use it, how they can get started, and sort of where to go, and give people a bit of direction. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Pleasure being here. Always happy to answer any other questions that might come up. If I don't know the answer, I'll try to dig it out.
I love that. John, thank you very much. And thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you.